The second longest lockout in NBA history is already claimed. The regularly scheduled training camps, the preseason, and of course regular season games through November 30th. And lately has talk of potential decertification of the Players Union revived this week. After the negotiating session, David Stern was asked how decertification may have played a role.
I don't think that the alleged phone calls or whatever I've read about them about decertification had any impact on our committee. Our committee is trying to make a deal in accordance with its mandate. Obviously, the owners started out at a much lower percentage and a much harder cap and a much harsher position on guaranteed contracts and a shorter position on the length of contracts and a variety of other things, including the elimination of the mid-level. But we are where we are, and the owners were hopeful that we could close out a deal.
We're joined now by SI.com legal analyst Michael McCann from New York. And Mike, David Stern obviously dismissed the notion that this discussion of decertification by players had any role in the proceedings in the latest round of negotiations. From where you sit, how, if at all, did that talk change the stances by either side?
Sure, Matt. So I think in terms of the owners, talk of decertification probably isn't all that threatening at this point. I think the owners likely feel confident that if the players were to decertify and file an antitrust litigation, they would ultimately prevail, that case law is on their side. I think in terms of players, though, it gives them another thought in their mind that if negotiations don't work out, they can turn to filing a lawsuit. And for players, that may embolden them, but not in a way that in the long run will help them, in a way that in fact could mean the season doesn't get played. So it may make the players more in a fighting spirit, but I really don't think the owners are all that threatened by it. And I think the owners know that if the players go that route, it will embolden the owners more than the players.
Well, not a lot of optimism from Derek Fisher's point of view after the negotiations. Does the lack of progress increase at all the likelihood that players would maybe more seriously consider decertification?
Sure, Matt. I think from what David Stern said, the deadline is Wednesday for accepting this offer. If Wednesday comes and no offer has been accepted, I think talk of decertification will amplify. I think players will say the NBA is going to walk back the concessions that it made in this current offer, and because of that, they're going to pick the next best option, which for some players will be let's decertify and let's file a lawsuit and let's go through the path of litigation. If they're listening to lawyers who are interested in antitrust litigation, then certainly that path will be more appealing. But I think the players have to be cautious, and I think they have to know that maybe the best thing to do is to accept an offer that isn't great, but gets them partly where they want to go, and that also saves the season. Because if you think about it, the difference between what they're willing to accept right now and what the NBA is offering may be much less in value than what the cost to them would be if the entire season is canceled and paychecks are lost.
Labor law is your field of expertise, Mike. So you know how negotiations generally go between unions and management. In your experience, how unusual is it, if that's the word, for a union president to decide not to even take a proposal back to his constituency, as Derek Fisher said he basically said he wouldn't be doing this week with his guys?
Well, Matt, it's not entirely unusual, and Derek Fisher made a valid point saying he's been duly elected to channel through and look at the different options that the league has presented, and he wants to make sure that the one he presents to the players is one that he thinks and those on his committee believe will end up helping the players. But certainly I suspect we'll see comments in the next few days from players saying something to the effect of, look, let us have a chance to vote on what the NBA has offered. Maybe we don't love it, but maybe most players agree with it. Derek Fisher, though, can say his job is to sift through the offers and present the offers that he thinks are valid. But I think we're going to see comments from players saying something to the effect of, look, let us have a decision. Let us have a voice, because we don't want to see a season lost.
All right, Michael McCann, legal expert from SI.com. As always, we appreciate your expertise. And Michael writes extensively about decertification, the process, and the pros and cons of it all on SI.com.
Thanks, Matt.
So these are the dates still ahead on the NBA calendar for the moment, although we're kind of thinking could be more games lost here in the near future if this Wednesday deadline passes.
I'm sure, Matt. If this Wednesday deadline passes, I think for sure you're in jeopardy of losing a chunk more of games and possibly the entire season.
A lot of good stuff ahead otherwise, as you see.